I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid. I listened to the audiobook narrated by Candace Thaxton. This was a suspenseful, slow-burning thriller, and a lot of it takes place on a road trip. This couple is going back to meet his parents, and I listened to it mostly while I was commuting to and from work, and so it was just perfect to be listening to this story while I was on the road at night in the dark by myself. It was just the perfect atmosphere to be listening to this story. This book was so well written, and I was so surprised by the ending. I cannot wait to talk about all the things that surprised me. I will say that this book gets pretty dark. I would issue some sort of trigger warning, but that is very much a spoiler for what happens later on in the book. So if you're in too dark of a frame of mind right now, or you think you'll be upset by certain topics, this is probably not the book for you. But if you think it is, I recommend that you go read this book. Don't look up anything else about it. Go into it as blind as you can, and you can come back and we can talk about how it ends. This book did an amazing job of conveying the absolute horror of suicide and making it seem just utterly terrifying. The way the book framed it as a part of the main character stalking and killing the other part of him was just so bone-chilling. And that moment where all the characters merged into one was handled so well in the audiobook. There's this repetitive dialogue going, and it's just terrifying and creepy and horrible. And we've had a female narrator up until this point, and the audiobook blended it so that now we had the male narrator coming in and kind of chanting along with her until she faded out and it was just the male narrator there. And at that point the story had converged into one character's perspective, and it was just so atmospherically chilling. It was perfect. From the moment the book starts, it has this sense of dread, and that dread just keeps building and building as the story goes on. It just feels more and more unsettling and more like something is wrong. And then when we finally get to the end of the story, it's just so completely shocking, and it shouldn't be because it's kind of in the title. The phrase, "I'm thinking of ending things," really does sound like it could be referring to suicide, and I even kind of guessed that that might be what it was referring to as the story was going on, but I never imagined that it was going to happen that way. And we don't ever really find out what is true in this world. It could be that the whole story was just this lonely man's suicide note and the way of kind of dealing with the different thoughts that were in his head. Or he could have actually had some sort of multi-personality disorder and actually believed these people were in his head. Or it could almost be some kind of science fiction horror where these people actually did exist on some kind of alternate plane and they were just kind of merged into one person in our reality. And in the end, I don't think it really matters. It still conveys the same sense of chilling horror no matter what the truth was. And I was surprised that even though I was horrified by the ending of the book, I didn't actually feel that much sympathy for the man who killed himself. The way it's set up, we're very much looking at it from the perspective of this girl who is going to have something bad happen to her. And then the way the story presents it and the way the different characters come together, the people who we've thought were attacking her are actually kind of the victim. Her boyfriend and the janitor character are the same person, and she is part of that person too. But we've spent so much of the book being afraid of these people and wanting to protect her against them that when it turns out that the person who's dying is a burly man who looks more like these characters than like the main character, it's hard to empathize with him and relate emotionally, even though you know he's the one who deserves sympathy. Somehow it just doesn't feel like something that you want to give him when you're at that point in the story. And I would be really interested to hear what a mental health professional or suicide prevention expert thought of this book, because it definitely paints suicide as a horrible, terrible thing, and it definitely makes it sound like something that you do not want to happen. But I'd be interested to know if it would actually help a person who was having suicidal thoughts. It seems like it would almost be the kind of thing that would trigger them more and make them more likely to harm themselves. And I feel like it's almost more useful as a tool for kind of spreading awareness of suicide and kind of trying to change the dialogue about how we speak about suicide to kind of help us see the victims of suicide as victims. This book fascinated me so much. I thought it was absolutely brilliant the way the story unfolded and the way the book manipulated your emotions. It was very different from anything else I've ever read, and I would definitely like to look for more books by this author.